Hello and welcome to this week's edition of India Inc. 2.0. I'm Nayantara Rai. Today we're in conversation with the 37-year-old Ameera Shah of Metropolis. Thanks, Ameera, for joining us here on ET Now.
Thanks, Nayantara.
You have quite, if I may say so, a fan following among especially the female young entrepreneurs. You have quite a story to tell how you took a single diagnostics lab and have grown it to such a large scale. So my first question to you, and one that you get at every business interview, how much are you valuing Metropolis at these days?
So it's not really how much I'm valuing it at, but I think what the market valuations are. We get all kinds of numbers, anything between 5.5 to 6.5 thousand, so it's close to $1 billion, which would be the sort of public valuation of Metropolis, assuming we were public at this point.
Will you?
I haven't made up my mind yet, or there's no date yet in mind at this point. I think it's a part of a journey. I don't see the public issue as something which is the destination. It's really just another step in the way. And I think what's important is that the organization has to be ready, which I think we are now. I think last year we probably weren't. I wanted to stabilize things much more internally. I have a great team on board now, and we want to give them time to settle in and really, get a grip on things. So now we're probably readier, and
Okay.
Now it's just a matter of, I guess, all of us, saying, okay, we want to. Which we
Is it because you also want to, or is Carlyle, your private equity investor on board, also asking for it?
See, I think private equity investors as financial investors obviously are always looking for a great exit.
Yeah.
The good thing is that Carlyle entered only about now a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Still early days for them. I think they've been happy with the investment value so far, but there's still another 3 years to go for them. So while of course they're keen because the markets are hot, they're obviously not going to push me to do something which I'm not comfortable doing myself. So I think we'll probably reach a decision in the next 3 months.
The markets are more than hot right now. That's an
They're crazy.
understood for
They're crazy.
steroids.
Yeah.
And you've had some great IPOs that have come out. But I wanted to also ask you, is that when you saw maybe other companies and their performance on the Lal Street, whether it's a Dr. Lal Path Labs or an Amtech Laboratories, etc., has that also maybe helped you make up your mind?
So, a couple of guys in our industry have gone public and are still enjoying fantastic valuations. And of course, that creates to some extent some sort of excitement in terms of what the liquid value of a business can be. It also gives you stock currency to be able to do more M&A. It creates some other benefits. It also brings negatives. You're more regulated, you're more covered, you're more questioned. There's many more of these interviews.
Thank you for that. Okay. I don't know how I'm supposed to react to that.
No, I mean, I'm joking,
Yeah,
but these are always fun, but sometimes the analyst interviews are not always.
No, yeah.
You're questioned quite a bit. So I think from those perspectives, like I said, it's pros and cons. But yeah, it's tempting for sure.
So tell me a bit about your journey. You came back from the US, you studied there. You studied what, finance?
Yeah,
you
I
worked
studied
with small
finance.
companies. I understand that's something that you've always been passionate about. So you came, what would not maybe be a small company, but smaller than maybe other companies, and you grew your father's company to a big company. Tell me a bit about your journey.
It's been a really enjoyable journey. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, and one which I'm very privileged to have seen sort of great highs, great lows, some very challenging times, because I think entrepreneurship is about grit, it's about resilience, and it's really about going through very challenging experiences to find who you are as an entrepreneur, as a person. And I've been privileged to have all of the little masala movie in the last 16 years. So every shade of Bollywood has been included in it. I started when I was very young. I was 21. I'd just come back from the US. I'd worked with a few companies in small roles and small periods of time. And entrepreneurship was new to me. I was very fortunate in the way that my parents, who are doctors, had built their practices very robustly, where they were based on very high quality and ethics and good integrity. And growing in a professional environment, that's what I learned, that the values with which you do anything are extremely important. And they passed those on sort of to me. And my thought was at that time to say that, look, can we make this into a chain of labs? My dad had had this vision for many years. So he obviously had the medical skills. I brought the business skills. We worked together first few years very closely. Post which, of course, he's been less involved. But
Is he still your boss?
No, no, no. I mean, that changed many, many years ago. I think that changed in 2004, I think. Because I think it became sort of clear that we were moving from being a healthcare practice, which is what he built over 20 odd years very successfully, to being in the business of healthcare, where, I think that shift meant having a very different thought process to really scale it. Really
And then you got
enjoyable ride.
ICICI Ventures on board.
We got ICICI Ventures in 2006 because we needed capital to grow. They exited in 2010. Warburg Pincus came in. And then
So you spearheaded all those conversations, whether
Of course.
and that time I would imagine Renuka Ramnath was
Renuka was there, Alluri was there at the time on our board.
So how old were you that they took you seriously?
25, 26.
So they took you seriously, and at that time,
No,
private
I mean-
equity was just taking off.
Yeah, but frankly, it's like this, right? If you're a complete startup and you have nothing to show, then these questions are very relevant. At the time, we were building and we had things to show.
Okay.
If they didn't take me seriously, that was more their biasness, and that was them missing out on a great opportunity. There were some companies who didn't take me seriously, or probably felt, young, female, or whatever biases they had in their mind, they lost out.
You said that your journey is also like a Bollywood masala. So the public spat that you had with Mr. VELU is of course well known about. It was covered in the media. What I wanted to ask you is that now that so many years have gone by, are you both in touch, or what are relations like now?
I feel I'm being asked about a relationship. Well, yeah, I mean, sure, we are in touch. It was, I don't think ever meant to be a public spat. It was very simple. I was acquiring Warburg shares because they couldn't sell it outside for various reasons. And I wanted to just give my investor a good exit. They had invested on my name, on my reputation, and in me with the business. And I felt like it was my responsibility to give them back their money. And more than their money, and make sure.
I was going to come to that. What about the IRRs, the returns?
All my investors have had minimum of 3 to 4x returns, and I'm very happy about that, because I think that says a lot for the organization and the value we've been able to create, and the fact that we run as a very transparent, high corporate governance with the principle of sharing. And I think that's very important, that you build value, but you
Correct,
share.
yeah,
You don't try to
obviously.
scam each other.
So are you going to look at 3 to 4 times returns even when you list on the last sheet?
It
if you
should
do?
be minimum.
Yeah, otherwise it's not worth it. Otherwise it's not worth it.
Well, I mean, more than worth it. I mean, otherwise, those are the valuations in the public market. So if we don't get the best of the best valuations, then we haven't pitched properly.
So are
Because I
merchant
believe
bankers
we're-
coming to you? Have they got the
All the
sets?
time, all the time. I shouldn't be complaining. These are good problems to have.
Yeah.
When you have people approaching you, believing in your story and wanting to take you public, it says something. So yeah, there are a lot of people approaching us.
Have you zeroed in on anyone?
We've shortlisted a few firms, which we had not done now. We've done it. Actually, I looked at it
Who are
last
they?
year. Difficult at this point because we haven't concluded yet, but we've shortlisted a few.
So by when do you think you'll file that prospectus with SEBI?
Honestly, don't have any dates in mind at this point.
What is your shareholding today?
70%.
That's the family's shareholding, right?
Yeah.
So you'll anyway automatically be eligible for that whole public minimum float, etc.
Yeah.
So that's not that because that is always also a challenge for promoters and to decide should we list at all or not.
Yeah, I don't think that's a challenge really.
You also said that you gave managed 3 to 4 times return. So when you had to buy out Warburg, etc., and part of that public spat was Mr. VELU saying he had no idea that this was happening and that KKR was going to fund you with debt, etc. So all of those transactions are now a done deal. I mean, that
all
was
these
debt.
happened
That was
2
debt.
years ago. All of them happened 2 years ago. Again, KKR was a great partner in supporting us at
Because
the
you
right
had very
time.
high pedigree investors, one has to say that. Warburg, ICICI, KKR.
And I'll tell you, at challenging times,
Carlyle.
at challenging times, we had companies like KKR step up to offer debt in a challenging situation. We had
And that time
companies
KKR
like
was also
Carlyle.
active at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Active in what way?
Active in the Indian market.
Oh yeah, of course, and they're still very active.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had great quality investors, and honestly, all of them have been good partners to us.
So you're not looking at any more fundraising maybe before
At
the,
this
you
time,
don't need
no,
it?
not needed.
Are you
Not
going to
needed at
share
this
your
point.
financials with us?
Do you really want me to?
Yes, I do.
So, probably not the best time. I can tell you that we're growing very well. We are, in fact, I'm more excited about the next 3 to 4 years of growth than I have been about the last 3 to 4 years of growth. And not so much because of the markets, because the markets have seen a slowdown. In healthcare, people believe it's completely defensive and there's no change, and that's not true.
Okay.
We do see the change as well, and if we see the change, then obviously there's some challenges in the market, because we are the most defensive sector. But I have, like I said, a great team in place now, and I feel like a lot of the things that were our weaknesses in the past have been overcome. I have a great CEO on board as well, who joined me about a year and a half ago. So I feel now we have a really nice synergy of lots of different skills. Company is stronger than it was, and a lot of the things that we had not done in the past to get growth, we're doing now.
Like what?
Just simple things like expansion. I mean, the way I built the business from 2001 till 2015, 16 was there was some amount of M&A, there was a lot of organic growth, there was a lot of consolidation of businesses and generating the profit out of it. But the organic piece of it had not been built out to the best possible ability, because we didn't have the strongest teams on board that had the ability to do that expansion, either geographical expansion required. I'll give you a simple example. In a city like Bombay, from 2002 till 2013, we had only 15 centers, right? Then between
The collection centers.
Collection centers and one lab. Between 2014 and 2016, we grew from 13 centers to maybe about 70 centers, right? Because I really pushed it and I wanted them to grow more aggressively, and we added maybe 2-3 labs. In 1 year, in 2016 to 17, so where we stand today, we now have 425 centers in Bombay.
In Bombay. How many do you have in India?
So we've now got about 1,600 centers and about 145 labs. By the end of this year, we would have added another 25 labs, and we would have added another 600 centers.
Welcome back. You're watching India in 2.0. I'm Nayantara Rai. Our guest today is Ameera Shah of Metropolis Healthcare. Do you think you'll always stay in diagnostics, or there will be natural progression?
So I think the diagnostics industry has huge potential going forward, right? Today, you see the organized sector is still only 10% of the total. 90% is in the unorganized.
How big is the market, you would say?
I wish I could give you a specific number. Unfortunately, there's no data available on it. It's estimated to be, a few $1 billion. It could be anything between $5 to $10 billion. So that's the entire market. Now, when you segment it, 90% of it is in these small unorganized labs, which are not branded, which are independent doctor clinics, and 10% is in the organized sector. What we're finding is that people, as they're getting more aware and more conscious about quality, as they're becoming more conscious about going to a brand because they believe it stands for standardization and hygiene and safety, they're coming to people like us, because most importantly, they realize that we not only put the patient first, but we're extremely ethical in how we deal with our customers. So when we say patient first, we do absolutely zero habits or practices that could in any way compromise the interest of the patient, right? So a simple example, if you came to Metropolis and you gave your blood, and we did your test for a particular result, and we found it was borderline. Most labs will say, oh, it came borderline, I ran your test, and they'll give you the borderline report, which is actually useless to you or your doctor, because you don't know how to decipher positive, negative, abnormal, normal. But what we'll do is we'll do that test on 3 other technologies we have at our cost again and again, till the time we have a 100% accurate report, which is the time we'll give it to you.
Okay.
So those are just small instances of putting the patient first, where the quality is completely not compromised.
But when you enter a new city, I'm sure there are, it's never easy. For example, I can speak for Delhi because I'm from Delhi. Most people will go to a Dr. Dang's because that's where they have been going forever. And for a lot of other diagnostics, maybe they'll go to, for example, the Mahajan lab, etc.
Right.
So how, in a city like Delhi, where you do have facilities, do you get new customers?
So, the names you're mentioning, while are very popular, are still a small segment of Delhi. So if you actually see, there are other providers who are doing very large business in Delhi, who you may or may not have heard of as much, but are still doing large business sizes, right? So for example, in Delhi, we do a reasonable size. We're probably number 3, or maybe number 3 in Delhi. But you may not have heard of Metropolis brand probably as much.
Okay.
The reason for that is because we're not as visible. We don't have as many locations. And when I was telling you about my team and putting in place some of these things, that's what's changing. So now, for example, in Delhi, we already have about 75 centers. and we'll very soon be at about 150 centers in Delhi.
Okay. When you say Delhi, you mean Delhi or you mean National Capital Region?
I mean the national capital region,
Yeah.
including Gurgaon and Noida. And we are going to quickly expand from 1 lab to about 4 to 5 labs in Delhi alone. As this happens and infrastructure builds, you then have the ability for us to be able to market and bring the brand out more, because now I'm accessible enough to you as a consumer that you can, within 5 minutes from your house there's a center. But if I have not created that infrastructure and I keep marketing to you, you have no place to access it. So that's the reason you haven't heard of us so far, because the infrastructure wasn't
But do you
built
think
up.
there should be marketing for healthcare or it should be word of mouth? Which
Today,
school do you belong
today,
to?
you know, I don't think it has to be a school. I think it has to be both. The challenge is, see, marketing is not a bad word, right? Marketing, inaccurate marketing, or marketing things which, like we've seen in some cases recently, where people are claiming things which are not true, is a problem.
Are you looking at inorganic growth?
Of course, absolutely. In fact, you know, we've done about 25 M&A deals in the last 16 years now. And we've been the most successful at not only taking the risk of acquisitions, but most importantly, integrating them and getting value from them. Because, you know, here these acquisitions are not companies you're buying, they're individual pathology practices, they're doctors. So you have to give them comfort, they have to be at home with you. You have to be able to improve the customer experience and be able to still make a viable commercial solution out of it. So they've worked very well.
Are you evaluating anything at the moment?
We're always evaluating things.
What a diplomatic answer.
We have about 5 deals we're evaluating right now. That's specific.
Yeah, that is. Is it to enter new cities?
Some of them are to enter new cities, yeah.
So when you said that you will, you know, diagnostics is a couple of $1 billion market, so, you know, it doesn't make sense maybe to venture out. Are you perhaps looking at, you know, maybe incorporating new processes within diagnostics, new kind of tests which you may not have?
Always. I mean, we have an R&D team which works very hard on almost coming out with something like 40 to 50 new tests every year. And we're always the first ones pioneering sort of cutting edge tests and technology. So we've got about 4,000 varieties of tests on our menu. To give you an example, most hospitals do only 300 varieties.
Okay.
Right? So which is why most hospitals are actually our customers, where they outsource.
I was just going to ask you, that why aren't you in hospitals?
We are. So most hospitals, all the top hospitals, you know, outsource their specialized samples to Metropolis because they think of us as an expert in pathology. What they don't have the capability to do, they outsource to us.
Okay.
Same thing with labs. You'll see all these labs which are, you know, street labs or diagnostic centers, all of them outsource their specialized samples to us as well.
Right, with that, we'll take a short commercial break. Stay tuned. You're watching India Inc. 2.0 here on ET Now. Welcome back. You're watching India Inc. 2.0 here on ET Now. I'm Nayantara Rai. Today, my guest is a 37-year-old Ameera Shah of Metropolis Healthcare. Would you agree that you know, there is a fear that healthcare is getting more expensive in India? That perhaps we're going down the American path, where insurance companies are going to start playing a big role in even determining what your tests should cost, etc., etc. Do you think we're headed that way?
I think we are headed that way partially. You know, I mean, Indian healthcare costs are expensive in some cases for Indians. Of course, globally, if you compare them, they're the cheapest in the world. But, you know, most Indians find them expensive because the earning capacity is limited to some extent. Having said that, I think the bigger challenge in healthcare in India is that we are not able to separate the good from the bad. And I think that's the fundamental issue. What has happened is that because you take hospitals, if you want to do an appendicitis surgery, you cannot go to 5 hospitals in Delhi and say who's got the best and most successful outcomes for an appendicitis surgery. You can't go to their website and see what percentage has been a success rate and what has been a failure rate. They don't publish it. Because in Indian healthcare, we don't look at outcomes. We only go by the doctor name. We don't look at that doctor has had how many successful surgeries and how many failures. And that's what happens in the US.
And do you think it's also time that we get class action suits? Because there is a lot of medical negligence, a lot of procedures that are being done that should not be done, or tests that are being prescribed that should not be prescribed.
I am all for better ethics in healthcare. Put some basic regulation in the system by the government, which doesn't exist today. Make hospitals, diagnostic labs, and everybody not only make accreditation mandatory, but make us report our quality outcomes and how successfully we are doing things. Give us ratings, so that patients are able to make a choice and say this is a 5-star rating. You have it for hotels, you should have it for healthcare. This is a 5-star rating quality wise, this is a 2-star rating. Maybe that's why there's a difference in price. And then let a patient decide what they're comfortable doing. And anybody, frankly, who's below a certain star rating should be shut down. Because no patient's life should be at risk.
Ameera, you're also very trying to grow in Africa. Why is that the case when we have this huge market in India and we really need healthcare here? Why do you feel the need to also focus on Africa?
You know, healthcare and education are two businesses which have a very long gestation period. Like you gave me an example earlier, Metropolis is not as well known in Delhi as, for example, it's a brand leader in many other cities in India, but maybe not in Delhi. Why is that? It's because our competition has been here for 60 years. You know, you've grown up hearing this name day in and day out. So my debate in my mind was, should I go into some of these other cities like Delhi or like Calcutta, where already there are existing large operators who have been here for 60 odd years, and fight that uphill battle? Or is it better to go to newer markets where there's more virgin territory, less established players, with a great opportunity, and create ourselves as the established player that people have to challenge?
So when you tell me that you get a valuation sometimes of 5 to 6,000 crore rupees, that includes the African operations?
Of course, it's the group. I mean, today a majority of it is India. So about 10 to 15% of our business is international at this point. We hope that it will obviously expand and get bigger. But these markets are looking quite interesting for us. You know, we've been doing international business now for 10 years.
All in Africa?
No, we were in Sri Lanka as well. We did some business in the Middle East.
So how many African countries are you in?
About 4 or 5.
Because, you know, a lot of Indian entrepreneurs who did expand into Africa are now trying to exit. For example, you know, we got Bharti Airtel based out of Delhi, which is trying to do that. It didn't go the way they thought it would.
From my perspective, they had very limited experience in Africa. They then went and did a very large acquisition in Africa. So they went in from the top, right, which is go buy something large and then get settled in. We've gone in from the bottom. So our investments, our costs are very low, and we are building bottom up. So we are learning the lessons at cheaper cost. If we're doing something wrong, we have less to lose, versus when you're going from top where you've not done the learnings and then you're realizing all the lessons later. So I prefer to build bottom up in markets which I don't know. In markets I know where I can take a bigger risk, I'm happy to do a larger size deal. Like in India, I would do a larger size deal because I know the market, I know the pitfalls. There'll still be 5 things which will come which I've never realized. That's just part of life. But I should know most of them. So I think it'll play out well for us.
So I'm going to end this interview with a little rapid fire round. I don't have a hamper to give you. I'd like to clarify that. We'll begin with the fill in the blanks part. Ameera Shah is a good entrepreneur because?
Because I'm self-introspective.
Ameera Shah's biggest success is?
My sense of having empathy and wanting to give back.
Ameera Shah's biggest failure is?
Can't say biggest failure, there's a whole long list of them, but probably in not hiring a better quality team earlier.
Ameera Shah's biggest competitor is?
As an individual or as an organization?
We'll do both. We'll start with the individual.
I just made my life more complicated, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Again, honestly, I don't have any single person that I see as a competitor. I would say in the organizations, I mean, you know who our competitors are. You know, I would count Lal Path Labs and SRL as our direct competitors in India.
Ameera Shah's biggest edge in business?
I think the risk-taking ability and a sense of being able to have a purpose with which I'm building my culture, and the ability to be able to share the value with others.
Ameera Shah's biggest fear in business?
Lack of respect.
Carlyle is a good private equity investor because?
I think they've been actually very helpful. I've been using Carlyle teams, small teams, but I've been using their teams as my own, and they've been very generous in allowing that to happen, which doesn't always happen with all private equity.
And your former partner, Mr. VELU, is fill in the blanks.
He's in Chennai.
That's a good one. My final one to you, do you regret not having a medical degree?
No.
Has it ever affected business?
Not at all. I mean, early days, it was harder for people to take me seriously because I was a non-medical person. I think it's actually helped me a lot by not being a medical person, because you know, being either a professional in the medical field or in engineering or in any particular field gives you a lot of depth of knowledge. It may or may not give you breadth.
Okay.
And I think business gives you breadth of knowledge, which is, like I said, I'm building a business in healthcare. I think the breadth was more useful for me.
And with that, Ameera Shah, I'm going to thank you for taking the time out and joining us here on India Inc. 2.0. And when you do decide to list, you better give us an interview at that time.
Obviously, very happy to. Thanks, Nayantara.
All the very best.
Thanks.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/etnow.